Hello and welcome everyone. So today we are going to be learning about our ELA packet vocabulary. More so, what we are going to do is decode or break down the root words. Words that we're going to be seeing coming up quite a bit, whether it's part of a word, half of a word, the ending of a word. We're going to be decoding that. Let's click present. The first word we should take notice of is the word cycle. Cycle, as you can see here, is written without the E. It's the Greek root word for circle. Think of this word as not just another word for the shape. A circle is always connected and it leads to the same places over and over again. So when people say they're going in a circle, same places. We've also heard the following terms before: a life cycle, you're born, you go up, you get old, the cycle of the seasons, the moon cycle, also known as phases of the moon. These things rarely ever deviate from where they start, from where they are in the middle, and to where they end. We also use the word cycle. It means going around and around, always interconnected, repeats. Here are some examples of cycles. So here we have the cycle of the seasons, when things are growing in spring and summer, and then the word ebbing kind of going away. That's when we harvest. We have autumn and winter, and it repeats. Here are some visualizations of a tree through the seasons. Here is a visualization of what the Earth looks like when it goes around the sun during the seasons. And again, we have the trees here to tell us what season we are in as the Earth tilts in that specific direction, either toward or away from the sun. Here are two that are more relevant to our studies. So we have the hydraulic cycle again, where we can see the transportation of water. And here we have something called the rock cycle, which, if one of you does their project on the rock cycle, is also called the geologic cycle. So we can see how the rocks are moving about the earth, how they're changing. This usually has to do with plate tectonics, as we learned already. Here we have the hydraulic cycle, something we have talked about before. Notice the root word here, one of them we're going to be looking at is cycle, which means, again, a self-repeating system, goes in a circle, or we visualize it in a circle more so to make sense of it, since it is a self-repeating system. Before we get to cycle, our main root word here is hydro. Hydro often relates to water. Include water you drink, the water that comes out of the sky, all the water. Even the technical name or the chemical name of water, hydrogen dioxide, hydro, is in that root word. So whenever you hear the word hydro, when you see it in the beginning of a word, it will usually refer to water. Here we have our sun cycle or solar cycle, which is a little more broad. It's another cycle that has to do with sunlight, or whether or not we're moving around the sun, or the way the sun's heat and light influences weather here on Earth, or the temperature, always with the sun. We've also may have heard the word solar, like solar power or solar energy. Hybrid cars run on solar energy. Some batteries can recharge using solar power. Solar, more often than not, will always refer to the sun, or particularly sunlight. There's a reason we call it solar energy, because we're powering things using sunlight. So keep in mind, when we see solar, we're talking about the sun. Next is our air cycle. Still with our cycles, a self-repeating system, we're going to talk about the air or atmosphere. Atmos in Greek means air. That's the root word. The other word here is sphere. A sphere refers to a three-dimensional shape that is like a ball shape, basically. The Earth is a sphere. That's why we call it atmosphere. So an air sphere, or sphere of air. When we think of the atmosphere, we can also imagine more than just the sky with the blue and the clouds. We're also talking about what's in the atmosphere. So quite recently, we read about global warming and CO2 emissions building up in the atmosphere in one of our menus. CO2 is a gas that is building up in the atmosphere, and because of global warming and all the other gas coming up, like methane, it's trapping the heat in there with the CO2, and that's causing the atmosphere to heat up. So the air cycle is getting a little messed up. So temperatures are increasing elsewhere because the air is moving where it shouldn't be moving with that sort of temperature, or some air cycles are cooler, some are hotter, and it's really affecting the environment. So when we hear the word atmosphere, or even just the root word atmos, we're usually going to refer to what's in the sky. Not just the sky, but also what is in the sky. And here is our geologic cycle. We are familiar with this one. We actually studied earthquakes, volcanoes, and plate tectonics, and how it affects things on the surface, ourselves, our landforms, how it causes fissures in the ground, how new land can form. Our root word here is geo. Geo in Greek means rock or earth. When we see the root word geo, it often refers to things that are related to the earth. And again, we read before in one of our menus about a geoengineering, which is altering the environment. And here we also have the words geologist and geography. Geologist, logist, usually one will study the logic of that subject. Geo, studying the earth. Geography, when usually we hear the word graph, we're imagining a visualization. And if geo is the earth, we are having a visualization of the earth. Always is going to have to do with the earth. And this is not necessarily in our menus, ecological or ecosystem, but it's important to take notice of it, primarily because when we study global warming, we're going to come across these terms. The root word eco stems from the Greek word for how organisms within an environment interact. That is a mouthful, I know, but simply put, it has to do with how plants and animals live together. Think of this as a circle of life from The Lion King. So the grass gets energy to grow from the sun and the rain. Grass and water is consumed by herbivores, animals that only eat plants. And then the herbivores are consumed by predators. Predators are carnivores, they only eat meat. So ecosystems have a very delicate balance, and a lot of them are various. They do not all just have the same types. So temperature and biomes will also play an important role in how life can be maintained in these ecosystems. And we're going to study biomes later on as well. And how does global warming affect these ecosystems, considering that their delicate balance does depend also on temperature. Here are some examples of ecosystems. So here we have frog, tadpoles. Frog eats the fly. Tadpoles or fish eat the tadpole. Snails eat the grass. A little more here, we can see a consumer here. Don't mind so much with these words here. We're not going to concern ourselves with those. This turtle is going to eat this fish. This fish is eating the plankton. Again, we have some more terms here. An ecosystem with non-living and living things. A non-living thing is something that does not eat or produce, such as a rock, for example, is non-living, but plants and animals are living. And again, another concept here. Foxes eat the rabbit eats the grass. The grass gets strong from rain and sun and continues to grow. This is a very important term. Do not forget this term. Some of you have seen it before. The term biome. Bio, our root word here, means life. Biomes are ecosystems with very specific features. They all have different plants, animals, weather, climate, landscape, meaning how the land looks, land forms. Is this a desert? Are there mountains? Is my land very flat? That's what landforms refer to. Temperature and rainfall are all distinct features of a biome. All within that biome is set to that certain ecosystem. So certain animals depend on certain plants to live, and certain predators depend on certain animals to live. It's also, in a biome, things vary from what grows and what animal consumes to what plant or animal another animal will consume. Think of it this way. You will never see a lion in the South Pole. It's there where it's very cold and very snowy. Lions also eat a very meaty herbivores like a wildebeest. So if it cannot survive in a cold environment, it cannot hunt, it'll die in that environment. Whereas a polar bear is perfectly adapted to swim in cold water and hunt in the icy land. So they can hunt for seals, hunt for foxes. They are fit for that biome. So biomes are going to be really relevant when we talk about what animal lives there, what do they feed on, and how do they live. because if you put that animal in a different biome, it may not survive. And here are some examples of biomes. Here we have the African savanna. Here we have a desert, a mountainous region, also known as a valley or a fjord. And here we have an ocean biome, because yes, even we're going to learn about the oceans that are the 5 major ocean biomes. This term we may have also heard of. Currents, we hear it a lot. We think it means about what's going on in the present, but that's not the kind of present we're talking about. Currents, when it comes to the earth, often have to do with the movement of the oceans and the wind. So currents in this situation with the ocean and the wind carry temperature. And as I was saying before, ecosystems and biomes are dependent on temperature. If the temperature is not consistent, if it's not something the animals are used to or the plants are used to, you can see those biomes and ecosystems start to fall apart. How does this relate to global warming and its effect on us? Our research will tell us. And here are some maps. Here we have the ocean currents. So all the oceans do not share the same currents. Some you can see are curving around, other are curving in a straight line, some are in an oval shape. Here we have wind currents. So this is how the air is moving around the earth, and this wind carries certain temperatures as well. Next, we've also heard this before, pollution. We're all very aware of this. We can see it in garbage cans in the form of plastic, bottles, torn up paper, broken glass. But that's not the only form of pollution we have that we'll look into. Air pollution, like smog, smoke, water pollution, so chemicals in the water, plastic in the water, garbage in the water. And then something else very big that's been coming up is plastic pollution. So we have microplastic, plastic that's very small that can be consumed by even us and we don't know it. Plastic that can suffocate animals, plastic that blocks the natural flow of currents. What is polluting the air and water? How serious is the plastic pollution? Our research will help us figure that out. And here are some pictures. Here is a beach. All that plastic was not just dumped there by people, it also came in from the currents. So the ocean carried all of that waste in. So somebody put that plastic in the ocean and then it came back up on land. Here's another example of ocean pollution. Here is what can happen to creatures that use the ocean or live near it. So here we have some aquatic birds that are suffering from plastic pollution. Here a turtle has plastic stuck in its throat. Here a seal's trapped in a plastic nest. And here a bear, which is really more of a forest biome, has a jar stuck on its head. And here is an example of air pollution as well. The chemicals in the air can also have dangerous effects on animals because if you breathe those in, that gets absorbed into the body and that can really affect how the animal in turn lives its life or if it's able to reproduce. So these are very important things that you can read about through your research. And then, of course, we have renewable. We've read about this before, renewable resources. The prefix re, a prefix being these 2 words right here or certain words that come before the root word here, new. Pre, we often hear the word record or redo, rewrite. This means again. During this section, renewable refers to things that can be replaced. Words such as recycle, for example, are related to this. We can take our plastic bottles and have them recycled to make more plastic bottles, rather than giving them to the pile of plastic solution. So when you think of renewable, it can be used again, it can be repeated, it can be reproduced. It's something that we don't have to worry about running out of. Then we have non-renewable. If means again, renewable means to make again. Then what does the non have to do with it? Non means not renewable. You may come across this term non-renewable resource doing your research as we've done before in our other ELA menus. What resources do humans use for energy that cannot be used again, things we will run out of? And how does that affect us, global warming, or influence global warming, and what can we do about that? Our last term here is deforestation. We may not come across this that much, but it is important to bring up because it has to do with one of our major biomes, particularly tropical forests. Let's break down